Join us in welcoming Ian Miller, a fractional chief revenue officer whose dynamic career spans stand-up comedy, apparel industry innovation, and a Guinness World Record. With deep expertise in driving revenue growth across the dental, pet, and health sectors, known for his strategic insights and dedication to excellence, Ian empowers organizations to surpass their goals. Don't miss his insights on transforming challenges into opportunities for success. Hey, so welcome, Ian. I am so glad that you're able to join with the Dental Business Hub today. I'm excited to talk to you always.
Oh, Monica, this is just, it's so much fun. I am so looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to this since we talked about doing this.
Yeah, it took us a minute to get it together, though, didn't it?
Yeah, a long minute.
Yeah, always on the heels of some vacation. Lots of things to talk about in dentistry these days. There's so much stuff going on right now. It's hard to keep track of everything, but I know that you kind of are in the thick of things. So what's been on my mind, as I mentioned a little earlier, is the tariffs and how they're going to be impacting dental businesses, especially dental businesses that import things from foreign countries. I think that's part of what you do as well. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, but what do you mean tariffs? Are there tariffs? Is that something that's still on the books? Yes, it is. There's no question that when the dust settles, because I still think that there's this big cloud in the air that we don't know how it's going to settle. We know that there's been a lot of discussion over it, and there's no question that whether there's tariffs or the threat of tariffs or going back to American-made product, there will be some inflationary result because of all of it. How much is going to be absorbed by the vendors, by the dentists, by the patients? I'm not sure. We're all going to have to take a good hard look at our profit margins, and we're going to have to say, can I absorb some of it? I don't think nobody can afford to absorb all of it, but I think that, some margins are going to be hit hard. Again, until the dust settles. Once the dust settles, I think cooler heads will prevail. We've seen that there's been a lot of movement on the tariffs, whether or not it's the 90-day delay, whether or not it's, reducing automotive tariffs or eliminating tariffs from Vietnam. All these things are changing on a daily basis. So it's really hard to wrap our heads around how that dust will settle.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? This is funny that you say that, because as you're talking, a couple of things occurred to me. Number one, business is always fluid. You own an amoeba. You don't own a business, right? It's always changing shape. Number two, this is an opportunity maybe to sharpen your business skills, maybe to look at your business from a CEO standpoint and really think, how am I planning for my future? Do I have enough set aside to absorb some of these shocking changes that could happen? Up and down the line. And for consumers, how am I spending? Am I a responsible spender? Am I a responsible saver? I think the whole country is going to be having, taking a second look at the way they manage money. Is that a good thing,
Absolutely.
bad thing, neutral? What do you think?
Well, I think, like you said at the very beginning of this, was that this is a fluid situation. And we all adapt. We don't realize how much we adapt. Everyone says they always hate change, which is true. Consumers hate it. Businesses hate it. Nobody likes change. There's so few people on this planet that like change. But one thing is that change is inevitable, right? Things always change, whether it's the weather, your economic situation, where you go to get groceries. All these things change. And the stock market's a great example.
Every day.
One of the things that I have said to everybody in the past couple of months who are really jittery about it is that the one thing that has happened 100% of the time. And there's very few things on this planet that happen 100% of the time. But 100% of the time, with every major crash, the market has rebounded, right? It may take longer for certain rebounds,
Yeah.
but eventually it rebounds. And so it's an interesting point because I think business does too. Again, survival of the fittest. Some businesses will not survive,
Yeah.
but other businesses will flourish.
Yeah.
And it's just a question of being on the right side of that.
It is a question of being on the right side of that and being prepared to be on the right side. I mean, preparation is everything to me. And it's like whatever you cast your mind towards achieving, you have a much better chance of getting there if you already have the vision for it, right? So if you wait for circumstances to happen and then you're always in reaction mode,
Yeah,
you're way behind before you even start out the door in the morning.
absolutely. Absolutely. There's an old saying in sales that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Ooh, I've
And,
heard that. Who
you
who
know,
is that? I've heard that
I
one
wish
before.
I knew because I'd love to be able to quote him, but that's why I said it's old. It's older than me, probably. One of the things that I'll tell people when they're asking is that this is one of those situations where a lot of experience trumps a lot of school. And I am not advocating not going to school, not by any stretch of the imagination. But there's no question that if you've gone through this, we had back in 2008, 2009, it was for different reasons, but we had a lot of business turmoil. And so, the back in '87 there was a stock market crash. These are things that fortunately or unfortunately I've lived through, and many people who've been in business for a long time have lived through, and it helps. If you look at the situation and you look at the world's in a mess right now, it's burning, but it will resolve itself. I do believe that.
And we do have recent history to look back on, just with the pandemic just a few years ago. And I think what I saw, I'm always a silver lining kind of person. I saw tremendous innovation. I saw people who weren't certain if they'd ever go back to their job develop new skills or new interests, new pathways, new goals. For me, the pandemic felt very, very dynamic. And all of a sudden, from home, we grew a wealth of entrepreneurs. All of a sudden, dentists were doing teledentistry.
Yeah.
You know, they were. It was just amazing, and we actually did manage to find alternative ways to bring patients in and to take the precautions we needed so that we could see patients in our office and in person again. That was a lot of innovation that went on there.
Oh, people had to change and adapt, and
Yeah.
we all did.
Yeah. So I kind of think that adverse circumstances might be the best thing for your business ever if you take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
terrible to say?
No, well, yeah, it is terrible. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's realistic. Whether it's, whether it's terrible to say or not, it's very realistic.
Yeah.
And, again, people have to adapt. People have to realize that, the most money that anybody has ever made in the stock market is after a crash,
It's true.
right? And it's no different than the pandemic. A lot of people who survived that in terms of financially, let's face it, a lot of businesses did not survive. And,
Right.
that was very unfortunate. But the ones who did thrived. There's going to be businesses who do not survive the tariffs. The ones who do will thrive. And that, again, history just repeats itself that way.
Or maybe it'll thrive in a different way. So I just think it's a time for innovation. As I said, I'm a silver lining kind of person, and there's always room for optimism and for hope. And having just come through the pandemic, to be honest with you, this tariff situation is minuscule by comparison, I
Yeah.
think, to the whole world shutting down. So
You're so right about that. You're
I guess
so
it's a
right.
matter of perspective, isn't it?
Yep. This is just a blip.
Yeah, but then there are practical things you can do. For instance, as I mentioned, I know that with one of the many hats that you wear, you're involved in sourcing products for dentists. How is this affecting you? What kind of pivot have you made?
I'm very fortunate that I really have not made so much of a pivot. For instance, anywhere who were buying anything from China, we have negotiated down prices to the point where even with tariffs, they're still very competitive. In some cases, I moved production from China to somewhere else in Asia. We've had instances where we've had to absorb a little bit of the change in tariffs. But at the end of the day, the pivots are small pivots. There's nothing major. It's not like I have any product that I'm bringing in where it is double the cost now because the tariffs from China are 125%. I won't do that. I'll find a different way to be able to produce goods. In some cases, we were looking for American production.
I
So
think that's the goal of all this, isn't it?
yeah, well, listen, you know what? If I could find American production where the the quality is there and the price is somewhat competitive, I'm willing to take a hit and absorb something. The consumer's going to have to be willing to pay a little bit more. Because I was in business when everything went from North America overseas. And when it first happened, nobody wanted to pay the North American prices because there was such a huge difference, you know? And so I think it's all about adapting and we will adapt. Well, I think that, we have to really emphasize if the price is going to go up because it's made in America, don't focus so much on the price, focus on this is made in America. The quality is there. And I think, especially for dental products, it's appreciated.
But I think we're going to have to serve more and serve better. What do you think?
I agree with you 100%.
So what does that look like, say, in a small dental practice that really wants to stay in business?
When prices go up, do you charge your patients more? Do you charge them more for your services? Do you cut back on expenses? Everybody today is looking at EBITDA more closely than ever before.
Right.
And so, there's two ways to increase your EBITDA. Increase your volume, decrease your expenses.
One other way, collect your outstanding receivables.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Or don't have receivables.
Or don't have receivables at all. But that AR can be a shot to your EBITDA like nothing
Oh,
else.
tell me about it. Yeah, but I'll tell you a great story from my late grandfather.
Okay.
He once gave our accounts receivable person just the height of heck because he looked at our bad debts and he said, "You're not giving enough people credit.
Oh
Our
gosh.
bad debts were too low." So, when you're giving credit out, you got to be careful of that. It's a
That's the
balance,
other
right?
thing.
It's a
Yeah.
balance. You have to make sure that you're
And
not repeating
honestly,
all
if you're
that.
giving out a bunch of credits, you probably owe a whole hunk of it to the state because all 50 states have limitations on how long you can hold on to those
Right,
funds.
right, right.
And you may end up paying the state of instead of getting the patient in for some services. So
So, but
dentists have so many things to be, to juggle in their minds. You have the clinical side, you want to be excellent. You have the relational side and leadership side. You want to build your team and serve your patients and serve your community. And then you have the nuts and bolts of running the business and even the marketing. Everything it's a lot.
Well, and it's so interesting, and no disrespect to any dentist, because it's the schooling that they get, but so many of them have such great educations when it comes to dentistry, but they just don't teach enough about business. And let's face it, most are businessmen, and so they're learning on the fly. They're learning with consultants. They're learning, as they go, but they've never been taught a lot of those things in school. And so that's a little bit of a challenge. I find
It's
that.
a challenge, but we rise to challenges, don't we?
Of
So
course,
it's
of
just another
course.
thing to rise to. It's another area of growth. That's how I see it. And if you're lucky, you get that team member. If you're careful, not if you're lucky, if you're careful, you get a great team member who can kind of
Yes,
plug your holes, right? Like
absolutely.
you complete me, that kind of team member, who can just fill in the gaps. But I think you never get to take your eye off the wheel any more than you do. You're a CEO. I'm a CEO. I don't get to take my eye off the wheel.
Yeah.
Not at all. So again, it's growth. Um, Looking at sourcing products maybe that you didn't look at before. Is there anything in your repertoire that would help dentists get through this period and serve their patients to the utmost, even under these circumstances?
Everything. No, it's interesting. One of the things that we look for is innovation. I don't look for any product or service that's just going to be another. It's just not in my wheelhouse right now. So everything I look for is something that's either going to save an office money or increase the patient flow. Because those are the two focuses. You know what? I stay away from billing because I know people like you who are just so good at the billing and collecting side. So I stay away from that. So I really do focus on either saving an office money or increasing the flow of patients. And, by having a great patient experience, by having products and services that make your office stand out, is the thing that I really, really love and focus on. And so, in times like this, it's much easier for us because everybody is looking for solutions to help them grow and to increase their EBITDA. And it really, it's challenging weeding out all the stuff out there that is available just because somebody thinks they have a better mousetrap, but in most cases they don't. Or in most cases, they just can't bring that product to market for whatever reason. But I find that today, anxiety is up in patients, and so we have things for that. Feel-good products, things that are, not just, hey, buy this toothbrush, it's gonna, make your teeth feel better. It's not about that. It's about having little things that make your patients feel more secure, safer, less anxiety, a whole slew of different things that can help the practice. And your patients talk about that exceptional experience they had when they went to your dental office. And to me, what makes it all worthwhile.
What are some of like when you go into an office and you're in your fractional capacity, one of your fractional capacities, and you walk into an office and you're looking for the dentist knows that something has to change. He knows he needs improvement. What are some of the things you evaluate?
I mean, the first thing you have to do is have a conversation with the office, right? Whether it's the dentist, the treatment coordinator, the hygienist, the dental assistant, you have to have a conversation with them and find out what are their pain points. Today, probably still the number one pain point in offices is staff retention and the staff shortages out there. Now, do I specifically address that? No. But what I do is I will address how we can help minimize the staff, their burdens, and how long it takes them to do certain things. How we can speed up that process so that we're not going to go out there and find them a new staff member. We're going to find out how to make their staff more efficient. Not clinically. Like one of the things we stay away from is most clinical things. We're much more front office. We're much more consumables. We're in a few different areas, but it's not that we're going to teach them how to do their hygiene treatments more efficiently. That's not what we're about. But it's amazing how you can save 5 to 10 minutes an hour of your staff
Really?
time, and at the end of the day, that's a lot of extra time.
Wow.
You know,
Okay, so I've got a list. I've got an audience that wants to know. Can you share one tidbit that might help some dentist who's sitting here going, "I'd love 10 minutes at the end of an appointment."
Absolutely. This is proven. So one of our products is it's called Paper Plane Therapeutics. It's a virtual reality that helps patients' anxiety, fear, and pain. And the offices that are using this have consistently reported 5 to 10 minutes of savings per hour.
Really?
And that is an astronomical number at the end of the year. Right there, your EBITDA is just shooting up. Because whether or not you take that 5 and 10 minutes and squeeze patients so that, eventually instead of making hour-long appointments, you make 55-minute appointments or 50-minute appointments. You can schedule an extra patient a day. Or rather than your patients running 65 minutes, you're squeezing them under the hour, and therefore you're not pushing each patient into your staff's lunch hour. Or you can let your staff go at the end of the day if they can get rid of all of those extra tasks that they have, especially because there's one less staff member in each office. Everyone's doing extra work. And sometimes whether or not it's, putting things into the autoclave or just cleaning up patient records or whatever that, if you have an extra 5 or 10 minutes an hour and get all
Oh
that
my God.
done,
Yeah, that is amazingly,
you don't
that's
need to
well,
stay.
in a 10-hour day,
It's
that's
huge.
100 minutes, 50 to 100 minutes. That's a lot of time. And what is this? I missed what you said. What was it called?
Paper plane therapeutics.
Paper plane therapeutics. Is that something that you've seen in action, and you were,
Oh, absolutely.
where'd you get these numbers from? Is my question, I
Oh,
guess.
we're always following up with every office that uses any of our products. We like to make sure that we understand it, that we understand the metrics. And so these are all from doctors who are using this right now, currently with their patients, and telling us their feedback from how much time they save.
I guess I gotta ask, what is it? I'm not sure.
So what this is virtual reality. So all the patients are in the chair. They're wearing a virtual reality system with specific software that is designed for dentistry. So the first thing it does is it keeps the patient head totally still. So they're not looking at a TV screen on the wall, and every time the dentist leans over, they're kind of going like this. They are always focused and keeping their head still. We've kind of coined it head still technology, which is basically just if they're trying to look around, the system will shut down, and like Pavlov's dogs, it teaches them to
Wow.
keep their head still during the procedure. And what they're doing is they could either be playing games, they could be doing puzzles, or we whisk them away from the dental chair into an island in Hawaii where
Okay.
they can see the palm trees blowing in the wind. They hear the rustling of the leaves. They see birds in the air. They see the water flowing as they're walking on the beach. And it's so realistic that they feel, because of this immersive technology, that they're no longer in the dental office and they're just enjoying themselves on vacation. And there's
That sounds amazing. So, like, I'm a person with dental anxiety. Is there an application just for straight up anxiety with this?
that all of our applications are for dental anxiety. So all of these are done with psychologists and specifically to decrease your heart rate, your anxiety, your
Wow.
fear, even your pain. So there have been many studies with virtual reality showing that you can't change pain, but what you can change is pain perception. The very first study of this came out in 2007. And there's a KOL of ours, Dr. Ankar Gupta, and he has actually given himself a needle, or actually his wife, who's also a dentist, gave him a needle, and he wanted to prove to himself before he would go out and speak on our behalf that this actually was a thing, that the pain was reduced when wearing the VR. And so he gave same place 1 week after another, one with the VR, one without, and he could barely feel it with the VR where you could visible
Wow.
pain without it.
Wow. I wonder what he was watching.
Actually, in the video, you actually see what he's watching because everything is on a tablet, and so they were videoing the tablet at the same time.
Wow, that is amazing. It's interesting because this virtual reality. It's not new technology. Most people are using it, I think, for gaming, maybe. This is a different thing. I guess they could be playing games on it, but you're using it in a clinical setting, getting fantastic results. And really, this is, for a patient like me, this would be life-changing. I've never had a virtual reality thing on my face ever.
Oh, really?
No,
Well, maybe
I'm a
it's a room.
dinosaur. Maybe in Tulum, yeah. But then I'll have a real beach to look at, so I don't have to. I won't need it. But do patients have anxiety around even they've always looked huge and bulky to me. So is that an issue with the patients?
Oh, we've reduced it down to not much bigger than your or my glasses.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's really, really small now.
And so a doctor who wants to invest in that, given these stressful times, how do you calculate if that's a worthwhile investment for them to make?
It's just we do a few, EBITDA calculations. We'll talk about the savings of time every hour. We'll talk about the lowering of the cancellation and no-show rate, the increase in case acceptance, and organic referrals. If a patient walks out of the chair and is just unbelievably thrilled with the experience, they will tell their friends, their family, their parlor groups, their PTA meetings. They
Oh,
will talk about it and say, oh my God, when I was at Dr. Miller's, it was the most unbelievable thing. I didn't even know he was working on me. I thought it was a 10-minute appointment and it really was an hour long. And, they'll talk about that. And then all of a sudden they will get more traffic.
so can you use this for patient education? Speaking of case acceptance, so many people don't understand what's involved in, say, implants or sleep apnea or some of these, you know, bigger cases that patients really need to understand because they're serious, either surgical or in some cases life-saving procedures. Is there room for patient education on this
I
device?
am so glad you asked that because it's actually the thing that is probably the number one. We have a whole slew of things that we want to do. And so this will probably start in Q3 of this year. So
Okay,
that's on the books for this year.
fantastic. And how are you're designing all of those programs? So are you going to have like experts on there talking about it, or okay?
Yeah, we're going to
Okay.
have, it's going to be a combination of, because we work with so many different KOLs, we're going to make sure that we have somebody in each of the specialties that are going to help us go through this. We have to make it something that's going to reduce somebody's fear of that procedure, explain to them why they need that procedure, and show them how relaxed they're going to be in that. So one of the next phases is we actually are going to be able to tie in a heart rate monitor and show them while they're using our experience how they're going to be relaxed and calmer in the chair, which
Wow. So it sounds like you're like intricately involved with the development of this as well. Is that
yeah,
true?
not with the development, more about the feedback to the developers.
Okay.
What, again, we look for as much feedback as we can from all of our offices that use any of our products. Feedback is so critical because, you don't know what you don't know. But when you have real-time usage of any product and they give you that feedback and you bring it back to the developers, to the factories, to whoever is involved in that process, you're going to make a better product. You will build a better mousetrap.
How long has this been out? I'm surprised I never heard of it.
We actually, our soft launch was at GNY in the end of 2023. And
Wow.
then
Okay.
we came out with more of a hard launch, I'd say by February, March of the following year, 2024. And we now just launched our small unit because the unit that we launched a year ago was still fairly big. I mean, you could use it as a dentist, but it wasn't small like glasses.
So this has a lot of applications for patient education, anxiety, just general cutting down the time by keeping the patients still in their chair. Is there a pediatric version? Because those are the most wiggly patients you're ever going to have.
Absolutely. This was actually created originally for pediatrics in the hospital setting.
Okay,
And
interesting.
they were able with COVID to do a clinical trial with 50,000 children.
Wow.
And, it's unheard of for a startup because, this was totally the trial was done by the hospitals. And what they found was that there was, less pain, less anxiety, less time. Even though back then it took 2 minutes to get a patient going in this, now we're under about 30 seconds. But back then it was about 2 minutes, and they still found that with the patients that used VR, that it was much faster than the patients who didn't. Because you get that one patient who takes you 15 minutes or a half an hour before you can work on them, whether they're chatting and delaying the inevitable or whether or not they're just not letting you do
All of the
anything.
above.
You know, I,
Plus, it takes forever to get me numb because I don't like needles.
well, of course, nobody does, right? I remember as a kid, so my mom used to drop me off outside the dental office, which was upstairs in a little house. And I would go upstairs, ask for the key to the bathroom, which was downstairs, grab the key, go in the bathroom, and just lock myself in. They couldn't get me out for 45 minutes.
Oh
And
man.
I had tremendous dental phobia. But, when I got out of there, of course, they were waiting for me because they knew the way I behaved, and they were ready for me, and I never got out of it. So,
So what drove you into this field? Because this is you've got Guinness World Records behind you, so many things. What focused you into dentistry?
well, after the recession in 08, 09, I, I was in the apparel business. So this actually is one of my shirts. It's a little
Oh,
bit big on
okay.
me now 'cause I lost some weight, but so I realized I wanted to get out. And my brother-in-law had just started a toothpaste company. He was doing a plaque identifying toothpaste, which was very unusual, very unique, patented, and came to me and said, I need your help in growing this. And so I said bye-bye to the apparel business and just jumped into dentistry with both feet. And we were wildly successful. And so we ended up selling that brand in 2023. And I just said, okay, if I could do it with one company, I'll do it for a whole bunch. And that's when I decided to become a fractional chief revenue officer for the dental world.
I love that. Fractional Chief Revenue Officer. For dentists out there who don't know what that is, could you explain? Because the fractional thing is a relatively new concept, actually. Um, Tell me about fractional
So
revenue
what I
officers.
do, and I've changed the concept a little bit recently, but basically, a lot of dentists have great product ideas. They're brilliant and they know exactly what's missing from the workflow, from the products, from what their patients need. And so a lot of them will come up with these brilliant, brilliant concepts, but either A, they don't have time because they're still working their 9 to 5 in dentistry, or their 8 to 6 really, but they're working their 9 to 5, or
7:30.
they never got that education in school how to turn a product into a business. And so that's usually why they would come to me. With my experience in sales and in dentistry and a bunch of other things, owning my own apparel company for a long time, I can help them out with the sales end. But really, what ends up happening is a lot of them will lean on me for other things, doing P&L statements, sourcing for them, dealing with customs. So I end up doing a lot of things outside what I would prefer doing, which is strictly building a sales organization and developing a go-to-market strategy for them. But at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do. So to get the product to sell takes a lot of steps along the way, and very often they don't know, and even I don't know until I do the due diligence what they really need. But I can work with a multitude of companies at the same time and give them the quality of that experience without the quantity. So they work with me at a fraction of the price, but they get the same quality as if they were paying a full-time chief revenue officer with a multi-six-figure salary. I like to stick to the dental wheelhouse.
Okay.
So, a lot of it is in dentistry, it's not just what you know, it's who you know. And so for the
Absolutely.
last 10 years, I've been, doing a lot of networking and meeting great people like yourself. And going outside of dentistry, it just would be starting from ground zero. So all the products and services that I work with, they all have a dental theme. And when I say dental theme, they could be dental adjacent, but they all have dentistry in mind, and most of them will have a secondary application. So, for instance, the virtual reality we do in the hospital setting as I can't talk anymore. The hospital setting as well as in the dental chair.
Okay.
I also work with a company that does labeling and logging for sterilization procedures. And you can imagine
Oh,
there you can go anywhere from dentistry to hospital setting to medical doctors to ophthalmologists to
everything.
veterinarians. You
Right.
can go almost everywhere. But dentistry is the main focus. Um, Another company is pet oral care. So, what does pet oral care have to do with dentists? Well, when most patients would love to buy a self-brushing toothbrush for their pet at home.
But I actually got your pet thingy and sent to my son in Alaska. I will let you know what he thought of it.
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, it's got to be innovative. It's got to help either the patient, the practice. It's got to help something as opposed to just something that will create a revenue. We're very, very focused on that, again, innovation part. We're focused on helping, and we're also very, very focused on social impact. So with the companies that I work with, we try as much as we can to work with them to help whether it's children, charities, social impact, to make sure that there's a play there.
Okay.
Again, for instance, one of the companies is a mouth guard company. So we do athletic mouth guards.
Okay.
And by far, it's the top mouth guard in the world today. It's made with carbon fiber, and I can get into all the details that how it helps not just the tooth, the jaw, but also helps mitigate the impact to the brain on a hit. And we'll be the very first mouth guard that can prove it. But one of the things that we do is we work with a nonprofit by the name of Beyond the Game. And so what we do is we find high net worth individuals who would like that tax receipt and contribute to the community. They will go to Beyond the Game, and Beyond the Game will then purchase mouth guards. And Beyond the Game's raison d'etre is really to get athletic gear into the hands of children who can't normally afford it. And so in order for us to make this kind of threesome successful, this triangle is to be able to make sure that we have the donors, have the 501k, and we have the product to help. It's not just getting, shoes or a t-shirt on a kid. It's actually helping to protect them. And by protecting them, they're going to be able to play a lot longer.
I love that. So even now, we started off talking about the tariffs, but I think since anxiety is such a huge thing, are you seeing dentists come to you and say, "Hey, I need this"? Are you seeing a drive in your business at this point, or?
It's very interesting you said that. We look at our metrics and what the sales cycle looks like.
Mhm.
And we're finding more and more dentists who we had presented something to 6 months, a year ago, all of a sudden calling us and saying, "Hey, we want that now." Which is, it's funny because you're saying this and I'm thinking, wow,
Yeah.
we knew that it was happening, but I'm not sure that I put two and two together and said, maybe that's why. Usually they come to me after it's too late, but it would be great if when they realize that they have a product, they said, okay, I'm going to make sure that I go out and get everybody who I need to do that properly. But usually they come to me after they've done a trade show and they brought their product there and they sat there twiddling their thumbs and saying, how come nobody's coming? And it still is the greatest product, but if you don't have that proper strategy and going out and getting the right KOLs, making sure that you have the right pricing, because many don't. That's why I say they come too late. It's never too late.
I imagine too, if you're not careful and you do come up with something, must be so easy to steal it if you're not properly protected. Like there's steps to go through, aren't there?
Absolutely. There's trademarks, patents, NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. You have to make sure that everybody along the way is signing these things and making sure. Even with me, before I get into the nuts and bolts of something, I insist that they sign an NDA with me, not to protect me, but to protect them.
Okay.
So there's a lot of steps in the way.
Trade component, import component. That's
Exactly.
you just
Many
caught.
things we'll do ourselves, many things we outsource, and we just make recommendations to. Yeah.
But as far as the idea, that's where the dentist comes in. He or she comes up with a fantastic idea. They find you, and then you work together to bring that to fruition. And
Exactly.
you kind of manage it. It's like project management. Is that?
Yeah, well, we have project managers on our team as well. So
Okay.
there's a bunch of things, and you don't need all these people, by the way. You don't need necessarily a project manager because we have systems in place. Let's face it, today with computers, AI, software, we will recommend exactly what that dentist needs. And it's not just dentists. I know a lot of hygienists who come up with amazing products that just don't exist. So, it's not just a dentist, but it could, whoever that dental professional is. And so we need to get all the software in place. We need to get the infrastructure in place. We need to get a website in place and a shopping cart and a merchant account. There's a lot of steps along the way to be able to do this properly, and investors.
Okay.
Although, a lot of dentists have a lot of money, they don't necessarily want to put all that money into this project. So
do you design a pitch for them, or?
absolutely, we'll do the pitch decks for them and make sure that it makes sense. I do know a lot of investors. I do know a lot of dentists who've come up with ideas and think that, that idea that they came up with on a napkin is worth $50 million. And you know what? They may be right. But in order to get that investor to invest in a $50 million company, you have to prove yourself.
Right.
You have to get to that first million, right? Before you can say the valuation is 50 million, get it to a valuation of $1 million with proper sales and margins.
Right.
And so we formulate that plan for them so that they're not completely out to lunch when they're
So we're talking long-term relationships, it sounds like.
Yes.
Like, what's the average relationship, would you say, on a new product from idea to market?
Really depends on, if it's something like a flower printed sleeve for sterilization, we could probably get that out there pretty quick. If you're talking about software from scratch, it could take a couple of years. If it takes something that needs FDA or EPA clearance, again, could be a couple of years. So it really all depends on the type of product that it is.
Interesting. Well, I think, I hope there are some dentists listening here who have that creative gene and those creative juices flowing. At least now, I'm going to put all of your contact information in the bottom. Even now, maybe this is the time to start thinking of some of those ideas that you hadn't bothered to, move forward with. Maybe you already have something in your mind that you're thinking of, and now the time to start thinking of plan B.
Well, and it's amazing. The one thing I'll tell anybody, dentist or not dentist, that sometimes the ideas you think of are so brilliantly simple. And I'll go back to my very first experience in dentistry. It was a plaque identifying toothpaste. Mm-hmm. The amount of dentists who told me, "Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't think of that." Or, "Oh my God, I thought of that 15 years ago, but never did anything with it." It was like 1 out of every 2 dentists would say something like that.
See, I remember those little nasty chewable
Exactly.
tablets that you give to your kids.
Exactly.
It didn't taste like, I hope the toothpaste didn't taste like that.
Amazing, the taste of the toothpaste. But, the whole idea was the point that I'm trying to bring up is that, a lot of people have just incredibly creative and profitable ideas. And sometimes they just need that little extra help to get it, from the batter's box to the plate.
Okay.
That was a great conversation with the Ian Miller, the CEO of Dental Mutuality. If you have a product idea that's been percolating in your mind, or if you're interested in some of the innovative solutions we discussed today, check the comments for links to get in touch with Ian.